video, we're going to go deep into our new library called Palindrome. Palindrome is an homage, an inspiration, a sonic expansion of existing and future scoring trends in the sort of cinematic realm, blockbusters, if you will. It's heavily inspired by artists like Hans Zimmer, Ludwig Göransson, Benjamin Wallfisch, Blake Neely, many of whom are clients of ours, and they've all just pushed the bar forward in the last couple of years, especially in terms of making soundtracks more synthesized. There's always going to be room for the beautiful orchestra and all that stuff, but the trend the last couple of years and where it's going right now is becoming much more experimental and synthetic, and Palindrome is really an expansion upon that concept. It's really big, massive, fat, cinematic arpeggiators, basses, leads, beautiful, wide, dreamy, detuned pads, and it's all made on analog synthesizers. We used a large array of both Moog synthesizers, Dave Smith synthesizers or sequential, but even newer ones like Super 6, Uno, those kind of synthesizers that really brings forth new character in the sound. And in this video here, I have some demos I want to show you, scored by Tarek. I'm going to play some of the different tracks in them so you can hear what they were made of individually as well. But we were also lucky enough to have a variety of my favorite performers play with Palindrome live. They've actually never played it before, so these are first takes where we just gave them the library just to try around and do different things. So in this video here, it's going to be a giant explosion of different tracks. I got some demos here, they got some performances. I'll play a little bit on the keyboard as well and show you how easy and beautiful and big badass this library is. So if you're curious about things like big blockbuster soundtracks, you've totally come to the right place. This instrument is a blockbuster tool. It's designed for professional usage, even though it's super easy, but it immediately gives you that big, fat, expensive sound right out of the box. So welcome to Soundpaint and welcome to Palindrome. Isn't that just the sweetest thing? Blake is one of my best friends in the world, and I'm so honored and humbled to see him just use this library in such an unusual way that I never would. Let me show you a completely different approach to how you can also use Palindrome. You might recall a track in the beginning of the video that was sort of very trailer-esque. Let me show you the sequence of that track and then break down individual tracks and instruments from it, just so you can see how these sort of tracks are made. When you go into that big sort of blockbuster cinematic kind of style, you'll see a healthy dose of arpeggiators, pads, basses, all that stuff, predominantly just coming from Palindrome. There's a couple of trailer effects on top of it, but check it out here, and then afterwards we're going to go into the individual tracks. Right, let's start here by playing one of the pads. also got this mean sort of howling lead sound. And you can hear every time it's making a natural variation of the same sound. And then one out of many arpeggiators. We sort of know where that was going. Let me try another one here. Let's say I want to take this one here, but I want to do it in that more sort of very popular right now style where you take an arpeggiator and all of a sudden you make it like spring super fast. So let me just modify in real time here so you can see what's going on. And then let me double the tempo on that one here. Do you hear how much is going on? We also got some fat, bottom-heavy, chunky basses here, film basses if you will. Almost like a bass drum. And then in the demo, Tarek also sprinkled with a couple of additional sort of trailer-like effects. Isn't that cool? I love this one here. It's like a racing car that just blows into hyperspace. Let me just take that sound here. Let me just isolate it quickly on one note stretch. So I can play it over my entire keyboard now. Then just added like a shimmer reverb to that as well, so you can really hear it. Ooh, listen to that. I love that sound here. Let's start to gate that on top of it. And let's say we want to do the same sort of trick we did before where we have this very sort of fast, like kind of sprint of notes. Let me put it here to 64 and let's add a few more here. Okay, I gotta stop this one. In this next example here, I want to show you a completely different approach to Palindrome. I was so fortunate that one of my favorite keyboard players in the world, Semrad, took this library for a spin, and Nicolas has such a unique background because he's such an awesome performer, but he also has a foot in the soundtrack world and has done a bunch of that kind of stuff as well. So he's somewhere between a traditional musician, if you will, and a composer too. And when he plays with these instruments, his approach is very, very different, a little bit from the cinematic scene, but also some from the more rhythmic scene. And it's so cool to see an alternative, perhaps more musical use of the library, at least more musical than what I'm doing here with like one finger, like, isn't that? All right, Nicolas, go for it. right, let me take you back to another demo track by Tarek here. We're going to be listening to the sequence once more, and I'll take you through the individual tracks once we're done with that. Let me try to play a couple of individual instruments from this awesome track we just heard, starting here with a really beautiful, big, fat cinematic lead synthesizer. Right back to aggressive arpeggiators. Isn't it pretty? I just like, I love this. Obviously there's some distortion here. Let me try to remove that for a while so you can just hear what it sounds like in its core state. So it's a lot more discrete, but we have a really potent analog distortion inside of Soundpaint here. Let me just play the same thing here and just try a couple of the distortion algorithms on it. Almost like some of them are like, almost makes the sound into a noise. I mean, you can still hear a tone in it, but it's very, very brutal on the sound. Almost becomes more like a tone generator, but let's try to dial it down a little bit here. And here's a weird pad main. And here is a barely visible pad. Isn't that beautiful? To me, it has sort of an air-like quality to it. I often think of water or air in my sounds, and this one had that sort of airy quality to it. Here's another pad. This one is cold. Do you hear the electrons passing through the circuitry? This for me is like the richness of analog. You really don't have to do a lot. Sometimes you find these happy coincidences. In the case of this patch here, you'll see that there's two different pads in it here. Let me just isolate each of them. First, this one here. And the other one here. And combined, they're like. I wonder what happens if we morph these guys here. Let me try it here. Is it me, or do you hear like sort of kind of like a pulsing generator, some kind of like nuclear reactor? Let's try to reverse the morph. Right now, this pad over here was dominant to this one here, but if you click on this button here, we're going to reverse the morph. Let's see what it sounds like. And here's an earthquake-like bass. That's analog 4-2. Let me just do that again. One note here. And just listen to how alive it is. It's like speaking. Let me try to play the model by Kraftwerk. Isn't that cool, that sound? It sounds like almost like a stadium crowd behind the sound. In this next part of the video, I want to show you a performance by Dyer, also one of my favorite session musicians, and you'll see how he's taking Palindrome for a spin. This is also the first time he ever tried it, and it's super fun to see some of his reactions because there's some big, fat, disturbing stuff in this library as well. I think it's so cool to see how different artists have different ways of approaching the library. I sort of had one thing in mind, the big blockbuster stuff, but all of a sudden people are using it more musically. And for me, Soundpaint is really all about sonic ingredients, if you will. We're only cooking with good ingredients. So when you see these tracks I'm about to show you, they're not super layered. There's about 10, 12 layers in them. But when you have such a beautiful substance matter to work with, it just becomes easier to make the music that way. And that's a part of the mantra in Soundpaint where we talk about like shortening the distance from your thought to your creation. It's really to make sure that it's immersed, not just in the logical aspects of Soundpaint, but also in the sound itself. So you always know whenever you go to Soundpaint, you have the highest possible mark of sonic ingredients. We only do things the right way. Aren't they cool? And isn't it interesting how we're not using that many tracks to create such a big sound? The reason for that is that we're working with good sonic ingredients. Everything in Soundpaint, and this goes in the core, the mantra of what the engine is, it's all about having good ingredients. Think about it a little bit like food. If you have a really good meal, the likelihood of that meal being made with good ingredients is pretty high. The same thing with sound and music. If you have really beautiful, strong, healthy sonic samples, the likelihood of you making beautiful music is also higher. But allow me to try to prove that point in a different way. Right now, I'm just going to build a couple of instruments completely from scratch, only using Palindrome, so you can see how quickly you can create like basses, leads, pads, and all that stuff in a matter of seconds. All right, let me build a bass first here. Let's listen to a couple of them. We're in parts mode right now. That's cool. Let me take the first one here. And then I'm going to take this one here and drop it in part 2. We now have 2 of them. I'm going to take the volume here and associate that to my mod wheel so I can dial in the sound here. The way you do that is that you right click, you choose Add MIDI CC Automation, move your controller, and you're set. Let me try another synthesizer in part 2 here. You're going to notice one cool thing as we do this. You see how the volume over here is still active? That's because we set the CC and the engine remembers that. How cool is that sound? All right, let's just dare add a little tad of distortion to it. Yeah, just a little bit of fuzz like that. You can hear a little bit of that electricity. That's how you build a bass. Let me try to build some keys here as well. We're in parts mode again. Let's listen to a couple of patches. I kind of like the first one here. And I'm going to take the third one, put it in part 2 here. So we have that initial hit, followed by a pad. And just like before, I'm going to right click here, associate this to my mod wheel. Let's try to add a little bit of shimmer to that, and I'm going to associate the shimmer to my mod wheel as well. I like to have the mix a little bit down in the shimmer. Sometimes it gets a little bit overwhelming. So as we dial it in here, I'm going to keep a very limited range here as we dial in the shimmer here. I'm also going to add a tad here in the beginning so it's never fully out of the sound. Kind of cool. Let me add a PPD delay here. I'm going to go in ping pong mode here and generate more stereo. All right, let's try to build a main lead here instead. That's nice. Very straight. But you can hear all the analog goodness in there. Ooh, that's even better. Okay, I'm gonna take that one. I'm gonna make this a fat lead. Let's add a third part here as well. Isn't that nice? Does it get more analog than that? You kind of know you've made it when you have just one note that just makes you infinitely happy immediately. All right, let me try to build a quick pad here as well. Oh, nice. Wow, check that out. Check that out. And that is all that he wrote. As you can see, I've just tried to surround Palindrome from different sonic angles in this video here. Awesome performances, me on the keys, all these different things. But perhaps most importantly is the fact that you can just create something new so fast. Sure, there are hundreds of different presets and all that in there, but as you can see here as well, Soundpaint is designed for you really to take ownership, but always knowing that the sonic substance underneath it all is of such high quality that you can just create a couple of tracks and pretty much get going. When we make beautiful wave files, you make beautiful music. So thank you so much. It's been such a privilege. I can't even imagine you guys have watched all the way here to the end, but I'm just so lucky to do this for a living and for you guys to be a part of it as well. So thank you so much. See you in the next one.